You wake up, and the first thing you see is the headline. New materials in the Jeffrey Epstein case have been released. Millions of documents, emails, contact lists, and your name, more than once. It's pulled from massive file dumps, bolded, blasted across social media. People don't read the full context. A screenshot and a caption are enough. Met with, communicated, appears in. You stare at the screen and realize the reputational storm is starting all over again. The materials resurface old dinners, meetings in New York, conversations about philanthropy. And among those files, a dirty story. It claims that after one of the trips to the island, you contracted an infection, and to keep your wife from finding out, you secretly slipped her antibiotics. This isn't a tabloid rumor. It's written in documents the entire world is now dissecting. You've already said publicly that it was a mistake, that every minute of contact with Epstein was a miscalculation. You admitted you should never have maintained that connection. But now the headlines sound different. Mentioned multiple times, compromising ties. Why did he meet with him? The word met becomes a suggestion. The suggestion becomes a conclusion. At the same time, the divorce is brought back up. 27 years of marriage. Interviews with your ex-wife where she speaks about pain and distrust, about how your contacts with Epstein troubled her. This has all been in the news before, already discussed, already absorbed into the past. But when new files are published, it all fuses into a single narrative. Business, influence, connections, personal mistakes, and Epstein's name stamped across it all. You turn on your computer, the system you once made the default for the planet, and read as your biography is rewritten in real time. People don't distinguish between levels. The fact of a meeting, the extent of contact, the proof of wrongdoing. For them, it's enough that your name appears next to Epstein's. In the digital age, that alone is enough to trigger suspicion. You're the person who launched a company at 21 and became a billionaire at 31. You dropped out of Harvard not for a romantic legend, but because you saw the core idea. If your operating system became the standard, the world would boot through your logic. Not through hardware, through code. And you did it. Your system became the default. Banks, schools, governments, corporations, everything runs on the architecture you built. People argue about politics, fashion, music, but in the morning, they press a button and enter your interface. That's called power, just without a crown. Then came 1998. The Department of Justice filed suit. Words like monopoly, market pressure, suppressing competitors sounded louder than the profit figures. The stock dropped 30%. You were called a predator. You sat in the courtroom answering dryly, irritably, sometimes with an edge of arrogance. In that moment, the world understood. You weren't a cozy programmer in a sweater. You were a strategist. And for the first time, people started to fear you, not just a nerd, a very dangerous man. The trial ended, but the aftertaste lingered, and you understood. Code alone was no longer enough. The image had to change. You created a foundation and turned it into the largest private influence machine in global health. Billions went to polio, malaria, vaccination campaigns, demography. You spoke about it in the language of charts and systems, as if you were reallocating computing power, not dealing with human lives. Reducing child mortality changes family structure. Improving medicine affects population growth. To you, it's a model. To everyone else, it's logic too cold to be comforting. When you say that improving healthcare ultimately reduces population growth, you're thinking in numbers. The internet thinks in motives. People don't hear sociology. They hear ambition. Too much dab. Too confident. One man talking about the planet as if it were a manageable system. You talk about access to contraception as a matter of rights and freedom. In interviews, you mention childhood dreams, a family, defeating polio, global access to planning tools. It sounds noble, and at the same time, oddly systematic, as if even in your youth you were sketching a world map where everything could be optimized. You once mentioned that investments in healthcare yield a 20-fold return. Economists know what that means. Social impact, reduced costs, higher productivity. But to the public, the formula sounds different. A billionaire found a way to profit from saving the world. Even if you're speaking macroeconomically, the language of return shatters the illusion of pure selflessness. The pandemic makes you even more visible. Your foundation funds research institutions, international alliances, vaccination programs. Suddenly it turns out you'd been investing in epidemic preparedness for years. To some, that's foresight. To others, it's a reason to ask how you could be so certain about the scenarios. You talk about herd immunity. Online, they write about microchips. You advocate global health coordination. In the comments, it's called supranational control. You discuss artificial intelligence as a tool for diagnostics and data analysis. In response, you hear the word surveillance. The more you operate through systems, the stronger the sense that you're trying to shape not just processes, but the direction of society itself. Once, you built an operating platform and made the world run on your standards. Now you're building healthcare infrastructure and speaking about humanity's future with the same engineering calm. You craft the image of a responsible billionaire. Public reports, transparent grants, a pledge to give away most of your fortune. You step onto stages and talk about climate, disease, technology, the future. Outwardly, a rational philanthropist. And then another point of no return appears. Your name surfaces in the Epstein case materials. Not in a headline about charity. Not in a donor list. In criminal investigation documents. In emails. In mentions of meetings. And that turns out to be enough. You're no longer the nerd who wrote a convenient operating system. You're no longer the guy in the sweater talking about code and the future of technology. The image fractures in a single news cycle. People stop seeing you as a developer. They start seeing someone connected, influential, closed off, part of a circle. You can explain that these were meetings, that you called it a mistake, that you publicly expressed regret. But the internet doesn't run on explanations. It runs on associations. One name next to another. And that's it. In the eyes of many, you stop being good. You stop being just the smart tech guy who built a product that changed the world. You become a figure from a different narrative. One about money, private dinners, elites talking among themselves out of sight of ordinary people. People start to distrust you. Your healthcare initiatives are no longer viewed as help, but as influence. Your words about demographics are no longer heard as statistics, but as intention. Your investments are no longer seen as support for science, but as leverage. Once you were accused of monopolizing the software market. Now you're accused of moral failure. It's a different level. A monopoly can be argued in court. Trust cannot. People talk about justice. They demand transparency. They want anyone whose name appears in such files to answer publicly. Not because a crime has already been proven, but because trust has been eroded by the mere fact of association. And you feel that shift. Before, you were discussed as a businessman. Now as a character in a moral conflict. Every word you say is analyzed through a lens of suspicion. Every initiative is examined with a single question. Why? You became dangerous not because guilt was proven, but because the image of the harmless nerd no longer holds. Too much money. Too much influence. Too many close ties to people who ended up at the center of a scandal. And the most unsettling part is that you understand this is no longer about facts. It's about perception. And in the internet age, perception is stronger than legal language. You built a system that billions of people use every day to work and live. But you didn't build a system that protects reputation. And now you have to live in a world where your name triggers tension rather than respect. Where instead of "he built a great product," people say "he controls too much." And people want one thing. For powerful figures to be held accountable just as strictly as ordinary ones. They want fairness. And for the first time in a long while, you understand. Control over a platform is not the same as control over trust.